Hello, Sharif here, and welcome to Friday. And we're going to be exploring the second part of how do we measure success. Looking forward to getting into that, but before we do, as we normally do, we're going to do a 5 minute meditation, and I pick up my device so I can set it for 5 minutes. And Go ahead and let's get started. Um, Actually, looking forward to my meditation right now. So, to the extent that you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes. To the extent that you're comfortable, square your body, keep yourself not rigid but upright, and deepen your breath. Take a couple of long, slow, deep breaths. You're breathing for yourself and for your entire community, the community of beings that make up you. Open your heart to the community of beings who are all around you. Human beings, all other beings. And as you are ready, please come back to our center and let's begin. Um, First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who's been buying the books. Yay! Um, it's interesting that a number of people have said to me that they were too impatient to actually wait for the printed book, so they bought the ebook and they're reading it. So then, when they got the printed book, they took over the reading on the printed book. And I'm one of those people who I don't like reading ebooks. I love reading paper books. There's something very tactile and very comforting. It takes you all the way back to when you learned how to read, which I think is an important milestone in your life. So uh, I was heartened by the fact that people still read print books, but I was really heartened by the fact that people were are reading the wanting to read the paper book, wanting to buy and read the paper book. Um, I also wanted to uh, recognize that a number of people. Um, I, I just sent out the second shipment of books, and I've got another shipment lined up for us because we're selling more than I was thinking. So, which is um, Paul Hawkins said that he's the guy that started Smith and Hawkins. He started a whole bunch of other stuff, and the guy who wrote the book Blessed Earth did started the Wiser Earth Network. Friend of mine, um, he said at one time, um, businesses always have problems. He said, good businesses have interesting problems, and bad businesses have boring problems. And he said, not having enough money, that's a boring problem. Um, and yeah, getting uh, fulfilling all your the orders that are coming in, those are interesting problems, and I like having interesting problems. Um, let's recap a little bit of what we did last time. We talked about this notion of how do we get paid, and I was how do we know when we've reached success? How do we know um, when it's time to celebrate? We're actually doing something here. And I refer to a concept that Daniel Quinn, the author of Ishmael, the book Ishmael, um, said at one time that the new revolutionaries will be paid in the coin of the realm. And I was trying to figure out what the heck that meant. And I asked that question among a lot of the people are who were in my workshops at the time. You know, what pays you to do the work that you do? And we came up with a lot of different ideas and sayings. Um, things like quality of life, aliveness, meaning, identity, um, getting a chance for more community, having a sense of greater security, having your values line up with your actions, which I think is a really important thing. Um, having a larger sense of creativity, um, attractiveness, and that doesn't mean just like you look a certain way physically, but You are attracted to positive energies. Having authenticity and also having love. And so the challenge we've got is, um, how do this list came from me asking a bunch of individuals who were in my workshops at the time, how do you get paid? We're doing something little, slightly different, but profoundly different. The question isn't how do you get paid? The question is how do we get paid? The question is, how many of these are universal um, constructs? How many of these are universal thoughts? Okay, where everyone wants an additional level of aliveness. Everyone wants an additional level of meaning. Everyone wants more community or greater security. Well, that may or may not be true. And I think about that in by way of thinking about that, I have this um, mental test audience. And this is the benefit of me having been out of the country as many times as I've been and being in as many different cultures as I have been in, where I take 20 people in my head that um, from different, very, very different cultures and walks of life. And so the question I'm asking of how do you get paid? I'm asking that of a middle class, middle income, middle life American. But I'm also asking for a poor rice farmer in either Thailand or Sri Lanka. They have a very, very different life than what you have had. They have a different way of measuring success than what you have had. They have a different way of connecting with each other and connecting with um, a larger sense of other. Um, and so the things that when we talk about having more community, and if they talked about having more community, you'd find if you start talking, you may be missing each other. So I think it's really important for us to have a sense of how do we um, measure success. For many of the people that I encounter in the world, success is measured by I've got enough food to eat. Success is measured by I have enough water to drink and that water is clean. These are things that many of us in this country don't think about. We may think about the quality of our food. We may think about whether it's organic, whether it's high quality, etc. And for the people who don't have the luxury of our lives, those aren't even those are not even considerations. Um, I was buying something in a store, and someone said, "Well, how can you buy something that's not organic?" And I thought, that's a question that I do tend to eat primarily organic. Okay, but when the price differential is too great, I don't. And I think that's true for a lot of people in this society. Um, But the question of eating organic is a very Western question. For many people, the question is, do you get to eat? And the fact that you and your children get to eat is considered a success. And so our as we begin to think about this holonically, not just for myself, but for the colony of beings of which I am part, the colony of human beings, the colony of all of the other beings that are part of my community, from the single-celled organisms that are floating around in my gut to the animals and plants that I eat, to the animal and plants that want to eat me. All of that becomes our holonic community, and we talk to each other. We talk to each other by attuning our awareness to each other. So I become aware of the plants in my apartment that provide me with fresh oxygen, a waste product for them. I provide them with fresh carbon dioxide when I breathe out, a waste product for me. So we keep each other happy. By understanding that we have that kind of a relationship, we have a symbiotic relationship, and we're keeping each other alive, we get to enhance that life. One of the things, and I forget who said this, this may be in the book called The Spell of the Sensuous, but don't hold me to that. I haven't read the book in quite a while now. But the author, well, I hope the author of that book, posed the question, like, what's the purpose of a human being? And one of the things that he said was, the purpose of a human being is to pay attention. That in some way, and we don't know what the mechanisms are, when we pay attention to something, that thing grows. When we pay attention to, when I do get around to paying attention to my plants perk up. Now you can say, oh, if you're paying attention to your plants and you notice that they need water, and so you water them, and therefore the water is perking them up. Well, that may be true. But one of the things that Native Americans have been saying is that when they pay attention in ceremony to the beings that are around them, those beings increase their life energy. Here in the Columbia Gorge region, many of the holonic Native American communities live on salmon. And every year, at one point in time in the year, they will harvest salmon out of the river. And I'll get into the whole harvest at some other point in time, and I'll try to find this video, which is amazing when you see with your own eyes what's actually going on. That the way that they have respected the salmon, the way that they are in a holonic state with the salmon, their minds and the minds of the salmon are one, that the salmon want to be caught. The salmon want to be part of this community. And when you see the video of the salmon jumping into their nets. The nets are so heavy with 300 or 400 pounds of salmon. This is dip net fishing. There should be one salmon in the net, but there'll be two, three, maybe four salmon, and this guy's trying to lift 300 or 400 pounds of salmon up onto the platform. And at one point, he's got these three salmon. He's struggling to get the net up, and another one jumps out of the water and comes over and does a slam dunk into his net. Now, when you are in a holonic state, all the beings are part of that life. And so one of the things of the coin of the realm is having a high energy holonic state. The Native Americans regularly say the salmon becomes us and we become the salmon. Our consciousness becomes one with the salmon. And I don't think that this is a metaphor for something or anything. I think their minds become one. I've been in situations where I am seeing through the eyes of a being who is not a human being, and I'm seeing as clearly as I see. I'm looking at the monitor. I'm looking at myself right. As clearly as I see me right now. So our challenge is, how do we increase my personal life energy? How do we increase our life energy? How do we increase our life energy with all of the beings who make up me? The several pounds of beings that are in my gut right now. The beings that float in my eyes that I see when they get dislodged. The beings that are in the mitochondria, which is a separate living being that lives inside of each and every cell of my body. How do we become one? We don't have to start with whoever our political opponents are. We don't have to start with the hardest possible view of we are one. Start with the easiest stuff first. If you respect the beings who make up you, make up this body, if I respect us, then I'm going to act a particular way. I'm not going to be doing things that are going to harm me/us. I'm not going to be doing things that harm me by eating bad food, drinking bad liquids, by thinking bad thoughts about myself. Why in the world would I do that? Why don't I love myself? How did we wind up creating a society where so many people don't love themselves? I sit at the coffee house, and part of me is, doing my work, and the other part of me is looking at people passing by, looking at how drawn, how narrow, how limited their life force energy is. They may be smiling, they may be frowning, they may be, but there's very little life force energy there. And then you look at someone who has an abundance of life force energy, and they stand out in a crowd. You can see them. Now, they may be smiling, maybe frowning, they may be trying to buy, something from the store, but you can get a feel for that life force energy. I would suggest to us that we want that. We need that. We need that to be our, um, we need it to be part of our anchor of who we are. And therefore, when I recognize my own life force energy and I'm paying attention, I can feel that life force energy interacting with others. Okay, I'm running behind here. So let me do something. Am I going to do this? I'm going to do this because I don't want to keep carrying things over into the next session. Although I will introduce this, and we may wind up having a deeper discussion of this, depending on your interests, in our next session on Monday. This has to do with what are the values of a holonic society. We know the values of the society we're in right now. Primary value is money, and whatever I do that makes me money is good. Whatever I do that keeps my money to me as an individual is good, and everything else can go somewhere else. I'm suggesting that we have a different set of values, and those values would include, back over here now, those values will include inclusivity, of course, right livelihood. And this is the idea that what I do in my economic field, whether I'm selling rice or selling website services or whatever, that economic action can be rooted in my spiritual principles and values. I'm not doing it just to make money. And if I am doing something just to make money, I need to stop. That an economy can be based on human needs. Again, I don't think anybody needs to, buy the next, you know, piece of music that Taylor Swift puts out. I don't think anybody, if you have a choice between food and whatever the video is, maybe you would select the food. That we have to that sustainability has to be incorporated into all of our beings. That capital is a tool, not a goal. Having more capital is like saying, I want more, dirt, or I want, my plants have to be bigger than they are. It's like we can let that go. That security comes from being in a secure community. Security comes when all of us are secure. The threat to security comes when any of us are insecure. That all positive human behaviors can be valued, not just those engaged in for money. For the longest time, people, men, who thought about women who worked in the home said they don't work. They don't work because they don't make money. Only activities that make money actually should be considered work. In a holonic society, all positive human behaviors get valued. Where there is simply no poverty, how can my right hand be impoverished and my left hand be abundant? It doesn't make any sense. If we are one, all of us are abundant. or all of us are in poverty and we need to do something about that. That there's a balance of human rights and human responsibilities. How many people spend all of their time talking about, I have a right to this, I have a right to that? It's like, yeah, but what's your responsibility to the society? And the answer is, oh, I have none. You are all responsible to ensuring my personal rights. And I can basically screw over everybody else and it doesn't really matter. And our colonies, our holonic governing entities, are the central factor in the economy. Economy does not run on the whims of an individual and does not run on the amassed political power of the state. This is a completely different way of looking at governance, at politics, and this is a completely different way of looking at economics. So it doesn't matter if one of us wants to go to Mars. What matters is that all the needs are met for all 8 billion human beings on the planet. And then they can try to convince 8 billion human beings that maybe it would be good for us to go to Mars. Okay. So our challenge is, how do we look at these elements of success? Our challenge is, how do we balance out our values so that all of us are valuing the same thing at the same time? Now, remember the examples I've used in the past of how an ant colony works, of how I was explaining how the ants were going to digest a bug, a really big beetle. And some of them were trying to get the whole thing stuffed down in down in a very narrow hole. Some of them were trying to widen the hole to get the beetle down there. Some of them were cutting the legs off and getting the beetle down one piece at a time. And all of them were doing something else, something different, but all of them had the same goal. And the goal was get the beetle down into the colony. Similarly, we don't have to be doing the same activity. We don't have to be taking the same activity, the same energy. What we have to do is have a common goal. How we achieve that goal may be left up to each one of us, and all of us may be actually in competition to see who does this best, who does this fastest, who does this most efficiently. It's a different way of acting, a different way of competing. I remember at one point in time, there are times when you see things but you don't see them. And at one point in time, I'd gone to the store to buy a tube of toothpaste, and it just struck me how many tubes of toothpaste there are in the world. Now, how many different kinds and brands of toothpaste do we need? Not nearly the number that we've got. So, what happens if we have enough toothpaste? What happens, 4 or 5 different brands, depending on what you like. What happens when we have enough cars, where we're not pushing and trying to sell new cars every single year, and we recognize that the Kia and the RAV4 and the Honda Civic and they are all basically the same car, and we stop trying to sell them as different cars? What happens when we create a mature human society? Remember, that's the center part of the book. And some of you have had your books long enough, you should be in the center by now. What happens when we set the goal that we are going to be working in a mature human society. We stop making weapons and stop using them, where we stop activities that are destroying the planet and we start the activities, regardless of whether or not you're making money. You start the activities that are leading to greater coherence, greater peace, greater love for ourselves, greater love um, for each other. And on that note, I think it's time for me to wrap up here. I want it with regard to the question of success. If you have um, things that you've thought about, write them to me. If you've got things that you have, the values of a holonic society, things that I didn't put on my list right here, write them to me. Let's have a conversation around this. As I said to, I think I said to you before, um, starting in the middle of August, I'm going to be out of town. So therefore, we won't be doing these live streams in the last 2 weeks of August. I'm going to come back in September with a different format that's going to allow us to have more direct interaction with each other. And I'm looking forward to that. In the meantime, may all beings be well, may all beings be secure, and may all beings be happy. Hope you have a good weekend, and look forward to talking to you next Monday.